Hi, welcome back. In today's video, let's optimize the API specifications that we have created in previous session. In previous video, we have created the API specifications for flight APIs and booking APIs. So there we have created the API specification in one root file. So in this video, let's try to optimize it. And we'll see how to use the data types, examples, resource types, and when to use the traits and libraries. So this is the example APIs that we have created last time. In last video, we had flight APIs, booking APIs, and in the documentation section, we can see the available endpoints, and all the details of the APIs are present in root file. So let's go to Exchange and look at the API that we have published in last session. This is a API portal for flight experience API, and we have the APIs under the resource flights, and we can see the details of the API. We have get API and post flights API, and let's go to the API designer. Let's edit the specification. Currently we are in API designer where we can modify the API specification. So we are currently in the editor section where we can see the details of the APIs. We have two APIs, get and post, under flights resource, and also we have booking APIs. So all the details are present in this root file, and we have more than 200 lines just for two APIs. And the booking APIs are they are not real APIs, they are just for examples with the different resources, that's all. So in this session, let's identify the repetitive code and we'll try to optimize it. We can see that we have the generic error codes, we have headers which is repetitive, and also we can see that the generic error codes are also repetitive in both the APIs. So we'll try to move the repetitive code outside to different files, and we'll create the data types and examples, so on. Currently, let's start with traits. Traits are like functions. You can create functions for anything. For example, if you want to create the traits for query parameters or header parameters, you can create them. You just have to identify the repetitive code, and you can create traits and use it whenever you need them. In this session, let's try to create traits for query parameters. Let's give a name, query parameters for get flights API, and let's remove the query parameters from the get flights API and create a traits for that. Okay, we have created a trait for query parameters, and currently in the documentation section we don't see the query parameters because we have removed it and created a trait. So let's use the traits in the get flight API, and you can check for the available options. Is the keyword that we can use, and we can add the list of query parameters. Now we can see the query parameters, right? Okay, I think there is something wrong. I think the indentation is not proper. This query parameter should be in the same line just like headers and responses. So we are little bit behind. So let's align it properly. Now we can see that we don't have any errors now. We have, okay, yeah, we are using is keyword, and we have used using the trait that we have created. Yes, we have created a trait for query parameters and using it. This way you can create traits just like functions and start using it. But this query parameter is very specific for get flights API, right? It's not repetitive anywhere. It's not generic and it's not repetitive. So it's of no use creating the traits. Maybe in that case we can directly use the query parameters and create in the endpoint itself. If we have some repetitive code, we can create traits and you use it whenever needed. So let's revert back the query parameters because anyways this code is not repetitive. Okay, yeah, we have reverted back, and in the documentation section we can see that query parameters are present. And if you see the APIs, both get and post, we have header section repeated in both the APIs, right? So let's create traits for header parameters now. This way you can create the traits for example, query parameters, headers or response, so on. Let's name the traits as headers required, and add the headers details. Yes, now in the documentation section we don't see the header parameters, so let's use is keyword and add the traits that we have created, and we can see that headers are reflecting. If we remove that, we don't see the headers. We can add the traits in method level and also resource level. Now we have added at resource level. So this way we can add the headers for all the APIs that are present under the flight resource. Now we have two methods, get and post. This header parameters will reflect for both the APIs, both get and post, because currently we have added the traits at resource level. Let's remove from post API as well, because since we have the traits at resource level, it should reflect for post method as well. Now we can see that for post also it's reflecting. If we remove that, you don't see the headers in the post API, and whenever we add the traits at resource level, we can see the headers for both get and post API. This way you can identify the repetitive code and create traits just like function and start using it. Let's go and use it for the booking APIs as well. And here for the booking APIs, we don't see the headers. Now we have added it, we can see the headers added to the booking APIs as well. So this will reflect for all the APIs that presents under booking resource, because now we have added at resource level again. And in the booking APIs again, we have two methods and we have nothing. We just have get and delete APIs. There is nothing defined inside. So let's add the traits here as well at resource level. This, we can add a list of traits. It accepts list, so we just have headers now. Yeah, it's reflecting for both the APIs. You can keep on adding to this list. This is will take the list of items. Currently we have just one item called headers required. So this way we have seen how to create the traits and use it for the for different resource. We can use it at resource level and also at method level, HTTP method level. So let's try to move this traits code to a different file. We'll create our traits file and remove everything from the root file and move it to the headers trait file. Let's go to root file and start using it. Here we can check for the options available in the shelf below, and here we can see the traits is available, and let's give some name, headers, and let's include the traits file here. Include is a tag that we can use to include the files, and let's replace all the traits name that we had previously. We had different name, let's replace it. And let's go to get API, and yeah, we are not seeing the header parameters. I think something is wrong. Let's find out. Okay, we are including it properly. Okay, let's go to the traits file. Here, yeah, there is something wrong. This file is basically a trait file. We don't need to again say that it's a trait. So let's remove that, and here we can see the options available. We have headers, query parameters and all that. For for all of them you can create a trait. You can create a functions for headers, query parameters, so on. So let's remove the name as well, because we are creating traits for header parameters. So we just need to add headers and also the details of the header parameters. We don't need to say it's a trait and the name and all, because in the root file we are using traits and we are naming it. So let's change the name. Headers is basically kind of keyword for headers. So let's change it to client header, because this header parameters has the details of client ID and client secret. So now we can see that header parameters are reflecting. Previously we had some issues in the traits file. We had unnecessary keywords. So yeah, based on your requirement you can choose the query parameters or headers, so on, and just add the repetitive code, repetitive sections, repetitive query parameters, so on. Now the header parameters are repetitive, so we have created traits file, included the traits file here, and using that in the APIs where we need the client headers. And we can use is keyword and add the list of traits. And let's, okay, here in the get flights API we have a example JSON format, right? So let's try to optimize this section. Let's copy the example. When the consumer calls this get flights API, they'll get the array of flight information. It's an array of flight information. Each item will have flight information along with the booking details, PNR information. So each item will have flight object and also PNR array. So let's go and define the data type of these items. Previously we did not have the data type. We just added the example. We just copied the example from Postman and added it. So let's create a data type folder so that we can add all the data types files in this folder, and also we'll create folder for examples. Let's add a file to define the flight array data types. Let's select the type of the file. It's a data type file. Let's name it flights information data type. This will have the data type for the array of flight information. So each item will have flight information. Flight is an object, and also the flight object has a lot of properties inside it. So let's start defining the flight, the details of the flight. The type of the flight object is the type of the flight is array. No, it's okay. The flight is object, right? And also it has a list of properties. Okay, let's see what all options we have. We have properties and flight as number of properties inside it, right? Okay, flight is just one of the items, one of the object inside the first item. So let's start with the array, because the flight information response as array of items, right? So each item has flight and PNR. So let's start with array. So in future we can create a data type for flight again, but for now let's start with array. The response is in array format, and each item has flight information and also PNR information. So let's define the first property. It's a flight object. The type is object. And we have number of properties. So let's add the property details. the response is in array format. It has a array of items and flight, and in the array each item will have flight information. Flight is of type object and flight as number of properties. Let's keep on adding the property details. We have flight number, which is a string field. Departure date is string again. Let's keep on adding the details of the flight object. Origin is string. Destination is also in string format. So all these fields accept string. And currently empty seats will accept the details in number format. So it's a number field. And departure time, arrival time, they both accept string input. And departure time, arrival time, both are in string. So in the documentation section, we can see the details of the object, the flight object. We can see all the properties available in the flight object. Let's remove the string as well, and to maintain the consistency. And we have flight object and also array of PNR information. So each item will have flight and PNR. So we have defined the flight object and we'll define the PNR, which accepts, which is of type array. So yes, the response is array of items and each item will have flight and PNR information. So we have defined the data type for the get flights response. So let's import the type here. The data type will use types for that, and let's name it as flight array and import the data type file. We get the option below in the shelf, and let's select the data type file. So previously we have not defined the data type in the response. So now we have created the data type for the flights response. So let's add the type of the response body we have. So let's add it, flight array it is. So it's an array of flight and PNR information. Yeah. Now in the response section we can see that whatever the example we had, those are reflecting in the documentation. So if we change something in the data type, let's change the PNR to something else, and now we are getting the error, because when we add the type, data type, and also the example, both the example and data type should match, because we are saying that the response body will have flight array information. We have defined the data type. We are saying what exactly will be there in the response. We are saying that part should be there as an array, but we don't have that. That's why we are getting the error. Now we can see that for first item we don't see the error, but for the first 0th item there is no error, but for first and second we have an error. So let's replace all of them with part, and now we don't see the error. If the data type and the examples are not matching, then we will get the error. So currently empty seats is a number field. Okay, now we don't have any error because the data type and the example is matching. If we change something, let's change the number to string. As per the data type in the response, the empty seat field should have the string response, but here empty seat has a number. That's why it's giving an error. So the data type and example should match. This way, if any developer or someone modifies the data type or example, we can identify it, because in the backend there is a validation. If data type and examples are not matching, we will get to know, because as we have seen, we will get an error if something is not matching, if there is a mismatch between the data type and example. So now we have reverted from part to PNR, the data type and also the example is matching. And currently we have the example in JSON format, so let's create a file for example as well and move it outside the root file. The file type is example and let's name it flights. Yeah, we have array of flights information. So we have created example file. Let's remove it from the root file, the example details, and add it to the new file. Okay, let's remove the example and add the example that we have copied from the root file. So we have created an example file. Let's try to import it. There should be space between the key and the include. Example, it's a flies example. Now we are importing the example details from a example file. So if we change something in the example, and also if you change something in the data type, you'll start seeing the error. So it was a number. If you change it to string, you will get a error because there is a mismatch between the data type and example. So this way we have created a data type and also the example files and used in the root file. And currently the example is in JSON format, so let's convert that into YAML. We will use the dash to indicate it's an array, and we are defining the first item in the array. And we have flight object, and inside flight we have a list of properties. We have flight number, departure date, so on. And we will have PNR information as well in the first item. In the array, we are just defining the details of the first item. Yes, we have defined the information of the first item in the array. So currently the example is having just one item in the array. Previously we had 3 items in the array, right? So currently we have just one item in the array. So let's go and check what response we are getting. As defined in the example, we just have one flight information, right? So let's, okay, currently the example is in YAML language. So there is another way using which we can convert JSON to YAML directly and start using it in the API specification. So let's copy the example completely and we'll try to convert from JSON to YAML. And in the right side section we can see that the JSON example is converted to YAML. Let's go to API designer and add the example, flight information example. So this way we can convert, or you can manually create the examples. You can manually add the examples in YAML language. Now we can see that the array has 3 items. Okay, now we have seen how to create the data type and also the examples in YAML, and we have used it. We have seen how to create traits and other information. So we have imported traits and types, and we have used in the APIs, right? Let's identify if we have any other repetitive code. We have a generic error response codes for both the API, both get and post. We have exact same response codes, 400, 404. These are generic error codes which are there for both the APIs. So we can optimize that. Let's create resource type. Let's name it error codes and add all the errors for get API. So whenever you have the get API, you will get all these generic codes by default, because these are the generic error codes you will have for all the APIs. These are very generic errors, not found and resource not found or bad request. These are very generic errors. We have 400 left in the get API. Let's copy that as well and add it in the resource types. We have created a resource types for get HTTP method and added all the generic codes here. We have named the resource type as error codes, and let's use it in the flights, use it for flights resource. So this can be used at resource level, so that this will be applicable for all the APIs under flights resource. So it should be applicable for get API. Okay, we don't see the error codes still. I think something is wrong in the way that we have created the resource codes, the resource types. Okay, there is an error. Okay, I think we are not defining it properly in the resource type. Let's remove all the errors and just have one, so that it will be easy to identify the error. It's not indentation problem. Let's check what options we get. Below get, we can see that what options we have for this. Okay, body. Okay, responses we have. These 404 and these errors are, this error comes under responses. These are response codes, right? 200, 404, these are responses. So we have missed the responses tag. That's why we are getting the error. Now let's go and check. We can see that 404 is reflecting fine. Okay, previously we were missing the responses tag. That's why we were not getting the error response code. Let's copy other errors as well and move it to resource types, error resource type. Okay, it's not aligned properly. Okay, now all the error codes are in the same line and fine. We have repetitive error codes. Let's remove that. And now the resource type, the errors resource type has all the generic errors. So currently it's reflecting for both. Okay, it's not reflecting for post API because currently we have defined the generic error codes for particularly for get HTTP method. So wherever you have the get HTTP method, whatever the resource type it can be, these error codes will be applicable for all HTTP get methods. So now we have defined the get method, so it's reflecting for get API under flights resource, but it's not reflecting for post, right? So we can do that as well by creating a post resources for post API. Let's create a resources folder and move this resource types to a new file. Let's create errors a resource type, and let's copy the generic errors. And the errors, the generic error codes are defined for get HTTP method, right? Let's align it properly. Let's import the error resource file. Okay, now we have both get and post API under flights resource. Okay, we are still not seeing it for post API, right? Okay, we are not seeing for get API as well. So let's go and check. Okay, there is something wrong in the new file that we have created. It's an alignment problem. The response should be in the next. There should be a tab gap. Okay, now we can see that we have the error response code reflecting for get API. If we remove that, if we remove the type, we don't see it. As soon as we add the resource type, we can see that. Let's rename it properly. Resource codes. These are error codes. Basically, we have created resource types for error codes and moved all the generic codes to a new file. Let's go and check the post API if it's reflecting for post. No, we are not getting the error codes for post API, right? That's because as of now in the error resource type we just have the get method, so it's reflecting for get. So just like get method, we will have to define for post method as well. So whenever you have the post method or get method, these error codes will reflect. Now you can see that the error codes are reflecting fine, because the type that we have defined, error codes, will have the generic code for both get and post API. So we have used under the flight resource and it reflects for both the method because it's reflecting it is added at a resource level. And let's see how to add for booking APIs. How to add these traits, the resource types for booking APIs. Let's add type and error codes. Now we can see that it's reflecting for the booking API as well. And these will be applicable at resource level. Booking is a resource, flight is a resource. So these resource type will be applicable at resource level. So let's copy these traits, types and resource types to a library. Library is something like if you have multiple data types defined or multiple traits, so on, then you can create a library and have all the information in one place. And later you can use the types and traits through library. So let's import the library here. Users, then import the library. Let's give some name for library, lib, and import the library file. To import library, we don't need the include tag. Even if you use the include tag, you will get the error. It clearly says that the tag must be avoided when referencing to library. So let's remove the include tag. And now we are importing the library and we should access all the data types and the traits and the resource codes through library. Type dot flight array. These error codes are also coming from library, right? So library lib dot error codes. Okay, this way we can reduce the number of lines in the root file. Previously it was more than 200 lines and now we have reduced it so much. And we have added the traits, error resource types for all the APIs that we had, and we have created a library and used it in the root file. We have used the client headers, error codes. Okay, we have created a flight information. It's an array of flight and PNR information, right? So we have a flight object. Inside a flight array data type, we have a flight object. This flight object is also repetitive because this flight, the flight details that we have, the flight properties and all these details are used in the post API as well to post the flight information. So let's create a flight data type and move the flight object inside this data type. Let's copy the flight object. flight, this flight is of type object, has list of properties. So let's go and create a data type for flight. Flight is of type object and has list of properties. Okay, we have defined the flight data type. Let's import the flight data type here, because this flight information is array of flight and PNR. So we have imported the flight data type in the flight information response. Okay, let's add the data type. Here we are posting the flight information. So okay, let's go to library and include the data type, the flight data type here. We had a flight array which has a flight information, right? And here we will create a flight data type. Flight is something which is there in the response as well, in the get API, and also in the post API we are posting the flight information again. So it's a repetitive code, this flight. So flight is a data type, and also if we change something in the example and if the data type and example is not matching, we are getting the error as expected. So let's copy the example and we'll create a file for the flight example. This is a flights example previously we have created, which is an array of flight information, but currently we are creating an example for flight information. This is for post flight API, post flight example. This will have a example of flight information. So let's copy. Okay, the file we have created is not available because it's refreshed. So let's create the example file again. The file is of type example, post flight example. This will have the example of the post API, post flights API. This is an example of flight information. Let's copy the example and we'll convert to YAML and add it as a example. Okay, we have defined the data type. So let's import the example file, include example in post flights example. So this way we have simplified post API as well, and the response is reflecting at the documentation sections. This way we have created the data type and also the example. We have used flight data type and also the example and optimized the post API, and we have booking APIs. So for this also we have added the headers and the response codes, and yeah, we have optimized the code of post flights API and also get flights API, and we have created a data type and example files for both get and post methods, and we have reused the flight data type in the flight information response. Here the flight and PNR is present, just like how we had the example, we have created a data type, and similarly for post API as well. And we have created the example from the JSON to YAML converter, and we just used it, and you can create it manually also, the example details in YAML. Yes, and yeah, we have created data types, example file, and also resource type, where we moved the generic codes for both get and post API, and these details will reflect at a resource level. You can create a new resource, booking, flights, or any other resource, and you can start using it. You will get the generic error codes for those APIs. Yeah. Okay, in the summary, we can see that for booking API, if you observe for booking API above, we have not defined get and post API. Get is there, let's remove it. Even if we don't define any HTTP method, even if we don't add any HTTP method to this particular resource, we still seeing get and post. And these methods are coming from the error codes. If you go inside the get API, you can see that we have a error response codes. We don't have success or anything, but we have a error response code. These are coming from the resource file. If you go to resource file, we can see that we have a get method, and get method comes with error response codes, and post is a method that comes with error response code. So, and this code, this error code is used in the booking API. That's why we were getting the get and post methods. So if we make the APIs the get and post method optional, then we are not getting it. If we add get or post method explicitly, then only we will get the APIs. Okay, let's go back. We made the API HTTP methods optional. Let's make it mandatory, the post API. And now we can see that post API is reflecting in the documentation section. If you add delete, we can see post and delete together. So based on your requirement, you can make them optional, because in this booking ID, if you just want delete method, you don't need post method, right? In that case, you can go and make that field, make that HTTP method optional, so that you won't get that default. So you will get only when you define the method explicitly. Here in the delete method, we can see URI and header parameters, because headers are reflecting because we added the traits at resource level. So we can see the header details, but we don't have the error codes. If you want the error codes, you will have to go to error resource code and add the delete method. Just like get and post, you will have to add the error codes for delete method as well. This way, you will get the error codes for the HTTP method you want. You just have to include the error codes for that particular HTTP method, and you can make it optional or mandatory based on your requirement. Okay, we have used the traits and also the resource types. And in the get API, we will get the array of flight information. And in any of the item, we can get flight information, but not the booking information. If there are no bookings for that particular flight, we will get the PNR empty, or the PNR can be null. How do we define a field to accept null values or empty values? Here, let's remove the PNR. Previously, it had an array of booking information. We have removed it, and we are getting an error saying it should be an array. As per the data type, it should be an array, but in the example, we have removed the PNR array. Right? Let's go to the data type. Here we can clearly see that PNR field should be array, but we have removed the PNR array details, right? So now it's empty, it's null. So in that case, you can make that field union. It can accept array also, it can accept null values also. By using this nil, you can make that PNR field union. You can supply array also, you can leave the field empty also. We don't see any errors now, right? So let's go and check the response. Here we can see that PNR is empty. Just like how we had in the example, we don't have any PNR information for the flight, right? This way you can make any field, you can change the data type to accept multiple values. Let's remove the PNR field. And here we are getting an error saying the PNR was a required field and we don't find the PNR field in the example. So here the PNR field is required. So let's make it optional. So you can pass the PNR field or you can just remove the field. It's not necessary to be present in the response. Let's go and check the response. The PNR should not be there. We just have a flight information. We don't have the PNR field. In that case, you can make the field optional. This way you can make the field optional, or you can make the field accept both array or nil. You can make the field accept string along with the null values. You can change any field. You can change the destination field also. For example, you can make it accept string and also the null values. You don't have to define always the values in this case. And this will be applicable for any of the data types. String, number, you can make it accept null values. Okay, this way we have optimized the APIs. We have yes, and also in the documentation section we can see that the details of the data types that we have created. We have created array of items, and in the documentation section we can see that the PNR is a union field now. And the if you want to see the flight object information, you can just see the details. And flight destination is also union field, right? The destination is union field. Okay, we have optimized the API specification. So let's publish to Exchange. Okay, the version is incremented automatically. We have published the API specification to Exchange. Let's go there. Okay, currently we are in API portal, and the details are exactly same as previous video, where we had the details of the headers, query parameters, responses and other details. And we have exact same details, but we have optimized the code. We have created traits, libraries, data types and examples, and resource types. And additionally, we can see the types available. We have created a data type. We have created flight array, which has flight information and also PNR information. We can see those details. If you want to see the flight object details, you can see the properties that are present inside the flight object. Yes, now it's in human readable format and we have optimized it. Yes, under the flights resource we can see the APIs, and it's just like the previous video. We have exact same information, just that we have optimized the code. Yeah, let's recall what we have created. We have created a data types. We have created flight data type, which was repetitive in get flight information and also post flight information. For get flight response, we have created flight information data type, which is an array of flight and PNR. And we have created example files, post flight example and also flights example, which had array of flight information. We have used JSON to YAML converter to get the examples in YAML. And also we have created error resource types, where we moved all the generic error codes for that particular HTTP method. For example, get or post or delete, we just moved all the error codes, and at resource level we can reuse it. And traits, we have moved the headers and created a client header. And we have seen how to create library and add all the details of the types, resource types and traits, so that through library we have used it in the root file. This way we have optimized the API specification. Previously we had 200 plus number of lines, and we have reduced it to 76. Yes. Yeah. That's it for today. Thank you. See you in next session.